Okay, hi everybody. I am going to make Grammy Kovich's Blintz recipe. And this is my favorite one. It's the only one I've ever used. The first thing you do is you need a blender. And what I usually do, I put these in order. So I put in 4 eggs and I blend them up just like 20 seconds. And then you add 1/2 cup of hot water and then I blend that a little bit, just maybe 10 seconds. Then I add 1 cup of milk and 1/2 cup of flour and like a pinch of salt. And I have been using gluten-free flour and it works fine. So you maybe put the blender on about 20-30 seconds till it really gets nice and smooth. Sometimes I put a knife in and kind of make sure all the flour is dissolved. And once that's done, I just let the batter sit maybe for 15-20 minutes. And I have it right here in a measuring cup that you can put right near your stove when you're ready to cook. And we'll stop right now and I'll get ready to cook. I am doing a little bit of butter in a non-stick skillet, I think it's an 8-inch skillet. Make sure you have a non-stick one so you don't want to be worried about how they come out. So what I sometimes do is the very first one sometimes doesn't come out real well, but you have to actually cook it a little bit longer. You'll kind of see that later. So I'm just melting the butter in the pan. It's probably just a little teeny pat, not very much, just enough to get it good and buttery and so nothing sticks. So I'm adding a little bit more butter now. And I just kind of take the pan like this and I kind of move it around. That's kind of what I do when I put the batter in too. You'll kind of see that when I do it. But right now I'm just trying to get the butter all over the pan so that there's no areas that'll stick. Once I do it the first time, you have to add just a teeny little butter for each one. As long as you have a good non-stick pan, you don't have to add a ton of butter for each crepe. So you can see how I'm kind of moving the pan around. That's kind of what I do when I put the batter in too. So you want it to get nice and warm. You kind of want the butter to be okay. So I just put another teeny little bit of butter in the pan. I made the first one and it came out fine. And I'm kind of moving it around to get the butter even. And then I'm taking my 1/4 cup measuring cup and I'm putting in about 3/4 of that. And I'm going to pour it into the pan. And immediately I'm going to start moving the pan around so that the batter coats the bottom of the pan and it's not too thick in one place. You can kind of see how it's bubbling up. So I just keep going around in circles until there's no more batter left, kind of like that. And then I put it back on the heat. And you might have to adjust the heat a little bit higher or a little bit lower. But if you can see, what I do is I take a knife and I kind of just slide down the side of the pan, just to loosen it a little bit. It's not really going to stick, but it kind of pushes it down. And then you'd be ready to look up underneath it once it starts to cook, just to see how the bottom is looking. The bottom you want kind of crispy. Ken, if you want to show them the one I just turned out, you can see what the bottom of that looks like. Okay? All right. And then we're just going to wait until it kind of dries. The edges kind of dry. And you kind of lift up. I kind of lift it up and look underneath. If it's not real, you don't want to get it too dark, but you don't want it too light. And you want to make sure that the batter around it sort of looks like it's drying because you don't ever turn and flip the other side. So I just kind of look underneath here, and it could just use a little bit more. I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit high. Sometimes my stove gets a little too hot, and then I just turn it down a little bit. Okay, so this is what's important. So when you're ready, when you think it's dry enough on the edges, you want to take this on a towel and you just want to turn it upside down, whoops, and kind of tap it out. And that's what it should look like. It can be a little darker. This is the first one I did. And then you can just kind of layer them. I just layer them on top of one another like that. So I'm also going to add another little bit of butter in the pan. And if it doesn't sizzle real fast, I'll turn the heat up a little bit higher. And again, just kind of move it around so the butter gets all over the pan. And I'm going to take my batter, pour it in. You can hear it kind of sizzle. And then hold it over the heat. Don't put it down yet. And just kind of keep moving it around just so that the batter kind of swirls around the edges. As soon as it stops swirling, put it down on your heater, on your burner. And then I saw it got really red, so I turned it down. And then I give it just like 3 or 4 seconds. And then I start just pushing down the edges with a knife. Because that way you can kind of tell when it's drying, when the edges are dry. And you just sort of have to look. This is still a little bit wet here. I think it probably takes, once the skillet's really hot, probably about a minute and a half per each crepe. And the best way to do it is just kind of look underneath with the knife. And you want a nice cotton. You don't want any kind of terry cloth dish towel. You just want a nice cotton dish towel of some kind to put it out on. They don't stick together, which is really nice. And Ken, you can show them how this is sort of drying now and how the edges are kind of dried and crispy. And that sort of tells you that it's done. I mean, it's not real dark underneath, but as they start to crisp up, you can kind of tell that that's what's going to happen. All right. So we're going to flip one more, and then you probably should get the idea. There we go. And then it's all right if it goes like that. You just turn it back over and just give it a couple, maybe 3 or 30 seconds until you actually want to move it up. And while that's happening, I'm just going to put another little pat of butter in here and turn it up a little bit if it gets a little cooler.
And how many are you going to make out of this batch?
So this batch will make about, I usually make 18, 19. And what I do, if you want to come over and show them the pans that I use a square baking pan that you butter, and we'll show you how they look in there later. I can get 8 in each one of those, so that's 16, and then extra I just put in another small one.
And then you freeze them.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about that later. So I'm going to do that now, and then we'll come back later, and I'll show you about the filling and filling them up. I think I'll just do one more of these like this. This one might get really hot. You can really hear it go. So I hold it a little bit higher above the heat if it's really super duper duper hot. And then I'll turn the heat down a little bit when I put it down. You can see that sometimes it almost gets a little too hot. Somebody else's oven or stove may be a little more accurate than mine. But anyway, and you can sort of make little mistakes. This has a couple little bubbles in it, but that'll dry out really easily once this starts to cook. And the knife just helps get it loose, so when you go to turn it over, and if you want to show them, this one's hard enough. I'm just going to move it up. And what I usually do is I do 2 rows of like 9, so I get like 18. Yeah, so I think that's, I don't know, I think that gives everybody a pretty good feeling for how you do it. And I said this one might take, there's a little more bubbly stuff there. I just kind of smooth that out. We'll just let that cook just a little bit more. But that one's getting pretty brown. I'm just about ready to, should we turn that over? Okay. There we go. And again, if it gets a little messed up, they stay together pretty well, so you can just kind of slide them off. Okay, so I'm back making the filling, and the filling in Grammy's recipe called for dry cottage cheese, which we can't find around here. So I'm just using plain, like whole milk ricotta cheese, and it calls for about 14 ounces. So I'm using like almost two 14 ounce containers. I'm just using a little bit less than the two total, because I always have leftover. So I'm going to leave about that much in the other container and put like maybe 1 3/4. So once I have the ricotta put in there, then you put in 2 eggs, and then I just mix them in. Usually I'll just mix them with a fork first. And you just want to mix it till it's really incorporated. And I think the whole milk ricotta is probably better to use, just so it doesn't get runny. So anyway, so you mix the egg into the ricotta. I do it with a fork. And then it just calls for a little bit of salt. I just kind of pour some in. You could probably use like a half a teaspoon. And then it calls for cinnamon sugar, and I have cinnamon sugar already mixed up. So I just kind of, again, sprinkle some in just for a sweet flavor. And then it calls for just a little, I had some lime or lemon juice here. Oops, I can't get it. I'm just going to put a little bit, probably like a teaspoon of lemon juice, just to give it a little tang. And then I'll mix the rest of it up with a spoon, because that's what I'm going to use to fill them. And sometimes even though it's raw egg, I sometimes take a little taste just to see if it's sweet enough. And if I don't think it is, I'll just add a little more of the cinnamon sugar. And you can just add sugar and cinnamon separately if you want, but it just makes a nice little kind of sweet, tangy filling. And you just mix it up really well. It looks a little like it's going to be a little runny, but it all bakes up nice and firm when you bake them. Okay, that's about it for the filling. Okay, so you can take a look. I already filled one, and that's what it looks like. And what I'm doing, I'm just taking one of the crepes, and I'm taking about 2 of the spoonfuls of the filling and just putting it on one end. And then I'm rolling it up like this, like a little pocket, turning in the sides, and then turning it over, and then putting them side by each right here. So this will go 4 across and 4 across.
Okay, do it again, and I'll get to the other side here.
Okay. So, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm putting about 2 tablespoons of filling, and then I'm rolling it up from the long side, and then I'm kind of putting in the sides, folding in the sides, and then holding it together and putting it in the pan. So you just want to make a little packet. And I know it looks a little runny, but it does firm up when we bake it. Okay, so about 2 tablespoons of that filling. Roll it again, turn the sides in like a little envelope, and then hold it together and put it in the pan, just like that.
Okay.
And then, okay?
And then the baking last step.
Okay. And then, then I'm going to put, I'll just show you. Then I'm going to put 2 on the other side. You have to make them sometimes a little bit shorter for this side, so we can do kind of a little less filling, or just kind of put more in the middle, and then you can fill them there. Okay, that would be it, and I'll be back after I'm finished with this and show you what else to do. Okay, so they're all filled. I have enough for 2 square pans, and then just 2 little extra ones. So what you do is you take just a little pat of butter, and you put a little pat of butter on top of each of the blintzes. Just gives it a little extra butter. You know, if there's not enough butter anywhere, but there's extra butter here. So just a little pat on top. And then a lot of people fry them, but this recipe, so once I get everything patted butter, you take whatever you're going to bake, and you bake at 350 for about 25 to 30 minutes till they're kind of a little bit brown on top. No, you don't cover them. No, you don't cover them. You put them in the oven just like this. Now the other one I'm going to freeze. So I'm still going to put the pats of butter. I'm going to cover it with saran and then totally with foil. And it'll freeze really well for a couple of months. But I still do the butter. So, and I do thaw them when you're ready to cook them. I would take them out of the freezer the night before and just let them in the refrigerator, so you're not cooking them frozen. And that's really it. And the little extra ones I bake, and then the next day, sometimes Ken will just put them in the microwave and reheat them for breakfast. So happy baking. Okay, so these blintzes are fresh out of the oven, and we like our blintzes with jelly and sour cream. Ken put lots of dollops over the top. Some people would use cinnamon sugar, but this is our favorite way. So hopefully yours will turn out as well as ours did, and you'll enjoy them. Thanks. Bye.